Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Lacombe Council Chambers for our Monday, September the 11th regular meeting. It is 5:30 p.m. on the button. So let me call the meeting to order. First off, with respect to the agenda is the consent agenda. Any items there that we'd like to consider for removal? Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'd like to remove the on-street patio from the Data Integrity Project Phase 3, so just the one policy, not both.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Doesn't look like we have any changes, so I would move that we adopt the consent agenda with that one small amendment.
Thank you. And is that the correct wording up on our machines here? I'm seeing it scrolling through. Adopted as amended. Very good. Please go ahead and vote. I expect that will be all green, which means it is, I did twice already. Learn something every day. Very good. Unanimously in favor. Thanks, everyone. With respect to the overall agenda, are there any items there to be considered? If there isn't, we still need a motion, please, from someone. Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Chris. I would so move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
Very good. Thank you. Please go ahead and vote. That is up in your machines now. Councillors Gullickson and Connick, and Dallas, please. With respect to the overall agenda, I believe it is. Eva?
It should be as amended.
Thank you. Seems interesting. Pardon me? We were informed that that was the correct wording. CO Gowdy? I think there seems to be some confusion with respect to the overall agenda, given that there was an item taken out from the consent, and I believe it should stand on its own, but
I believe it was to be as amended. There we are. And we've got it updated for you.
that is unanimously in favor. Thank you. So then the on-street patio portion that was pulled out of the consent agenda, Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, so I don't have a problem with the idea of moving it from a council policy to an administrative policy. That's not the issue. My question is more to do with, so it seems like at least in the introduction, it really talks about bistro set or a patio, but then later on into the actual policy, let me just skip ahead. I have it highlighted. So section 8, then it talks about all on-street patios and boardwalk. So now we have discussion about boardwalk, whereas I don't feel that that's referenced at the very beginning with definitions. And I'm really only pulling that out because I think I've spoken to this in the past. I'm sure I've spoken to this in the past, that I don't like that we do boardwalk type setups anymore. I like where we, from my understanding, again, because there's no definition, but from my understanding, that would incorporate where the sidewalk is being rerouted via now a new patio, and that the patio is being placed where we're now saying that bistro sets would be. I feel like that bistro sets and on-street patios is good. I don't like this contemplation of a boardwalk. Reason specific, it's not as aesthetic, although I guess partially it's that. It's because it's an accessibility issue. If you are somebody who requires wheelchair, walker, any kind of mobility aid, that traversing that wood boardwalk around a patio is actually really awkward and a little scary and potentially dangerous. And I feel like that is something that we should say a ship has sailed on, and that no longer be renewing that style. So I would actually like to see that section removed from this policy. Again, I'm saying this now because right now it's a council policy, but it's about to become an administrative policy. And so I want to hand the torch off, but with direction, at least from one member of council. So just I'd like to put that out for consideration.
Thank you. I've seen a bunch of lights here, but so I'll go next. The one item that I wonder if we shouldn't consider on there is for the reinstatement of a license on any of these. I have no problem with the 3-year proposed timeframe. However, there are some that I would suggest are perhaps a little more controversial than others. And there really is no mechanism in there when one is coming due for the public to have input into that decision, so that whoever is in charge, whether it's council currently or administration as proposed here, to have that kind of input, because it's the kind of thing that it may be perfectly acceptable to phone in and make a complaint. However, if they've got 2 out of their 3 years left, chances are it's going to kind of fall on deaf ears for a bit. So I think there needs to be some sort of mechanism in there to make it known to the public that that is going to be considered, because it is for a multi-year length of time. So if we could word something on there, I think that would be worth consideration. T.O. Gowdy?
Okay, thank you. It was actually just in here to transfer from council policy to administrative policy, basically a copy over. It's great to actually get some direction on the bylaw itself too. We will bring back an amended one. And with these 2 options for you, one, eliminating the boardwalks so that no longer be acceptable upon the renewal, and one, to provide an avenue for public input and or council approval upon the renewal, the 3-year time period. And we'll bring you the amended bylaw
Sounds good.
at the future meeting.
And then we can vote on those separately at that time when we see the correct wording and how they're going to impact the overall policy.
I think that would be best. If I'm not sure that I would get all of the instances of boardwalk, right off the top of while we're live here, but we can certainly bring something back with those for you to a future meeting. Or if you want to just say no more boardwalks tonight and public input for renewals, it is an administrative policy, and so I can make those changes and bring it back and notify you through the CAO report if you prefer.
Very good. Then, so to continue this one, we should probably consider some sort of a motion to bring it back at a later date with options for consideration by council. Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I would definitely make that motion to please bring back on-street patio policy at a later date with the removal of references to boardwalk and a mechanism to allow for public input.
Thank you. And while administration is inputting that into our voting units, still struggling with the whole consent agenda. Do we still need an additional motion on this item because there already was one to bring it back further, or no?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you. But it wasn't a very good time waster after all. I'm sorry, Eva, go ahead.
Sorry, can I get Councillor Hibbs to please restate the motion? What I've got so far is that council directs administration to bring back the on-street patio policy at a later date with removal of references to boardwalk and
Include a mechanism for public input or feedback rather, sorry.
That won't take long, and when that comes up, we can. Quite possibly the first 30 seconds of silence there's ever been in this room.
Mayor Creasy, maybe if I.
CEO Gaudy, go ahead.
While that is going on, we were just, Director Pichet and I were talking about the exact mechanism of pulling one item from the consent agenda, and technically it is the whole memo that's been pulled from the consent agenda. So if you would consider a possible motion after this one to rescind the council routine disclosure policy, replacing it with an administrative policy as described and attached in this request for decision, that would allow that one to still proceed.
Thank you. That's kind of what I was hinting at, but I wasn't sure what the proper process was, and that I think that covers our bases better than leaving it up in the air. So thank you for that. So there we have motion 2.2.5 D. That administration bring back on-street patio parking policy at a later date. Extra D in there with removal of references to boardwalk and include a mechanism for public feedback. I think we're all of the understanding that it was for dates for re-up, so that'll work well fine. So please go ahead and vote. That is unanimous. We look forward to that coming back at a later date. And one final motion for the agenda, because we did take out basically the data integrity project. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I will make that vote or that motion that council rescinds the council routine disclosure policy 18/211.01 2019 PO, replacing it with an administrative policy as described and attached in this request for decision.
No other questions or concerns? We'll wait for that to come up on our machines then. And I believe that is on your units now. Please go ahead and vote. That is unanimously in favor as well. Thank you. All right, moving down our agenda, we do have a presentation today, and happy to welcome our MLA, Jennifer Johnson. Please make your way up. Thank you for coming out to see us this evening. MLA Johnson, I'll just remind you to please use the microphone there. The bottom bar will light up the microphone there for the benefit of those watching online, as well as those behind you in the gallery. And whenever you like, the floor is yours.
So this is my first time with you, and I thank you first of all for inviting me. It is a delight to be here, truly. And how much time have I got?
Well, with politicians, I hate to say it's open-ended, but if you choose to take 15 minutes or so, Does that work for you?
I don't think I'll need that much.
Very
but,
good. In that
maybe
case,
we can
in that
overdo
case,
some
you
questions.
have unlimited time.
Sounds good. I'll give a brief report, and then I did have a few questions here that were given to me. If I can have a chance, I'll answer those. May 29th was the election, and I have hit the ground running, so to speak. I've visited over 300 businesses so far in the entire constituency. Most of the ones in Lacombe, about 2/3 or 3/4 in Ponoka, everything in Blackfalds, Lacombe, Tees. There's nothing really in Tees, maybe one. And Alex, Mirror. So I've been to every community to visit all the businesses, and that's been really productive to see what they're up to, what their concerns are, and how I can help in their path going forward and to get direction from them. So that's been a real joy, actually. And of course, it's not all joy, but overall, I've also met with County of Ponoka and County of Lacombe, and with the town of Blackfalds and the town of Ponoka. And so that's why it's really nice to be with you here tonight and to round that off. And I am looking forward to working with all of you through the next almost 4 years and to see how we can build a relationship and go forward to meet your needs. And I'll open up for questions maybe at the end, but that probably takes us into the next part of your questions. You were asking first, the one was, how can we support you in advocating for issues facing this constituency? Well, I think it's partly in what you've already done here was with open communication, inviting me to come and share with you in this time to hear what concerns you have and to work with you on that. So I think open communication is the first way we can work together. And I would say, especially concerning constituency issues, obviously municipal issues like boardwalks and patios you're not going to come to me about. But for political or ministerial issues, let's get together and have some conversations about those. So that's one way we can work together. And then number two, in my opinion, what is the best avenue for us to approach the government through me or directly to them with me at your side? And that's a bit of a more complicated one because, again, there are issues that you're going to be able to take directly to the government. I'm not going to dictate to you what those are. You guys have a lot of experience, probably a lot more than I have, because I'm still new at this. So if there's issues I can help you with, I'm more than delighted to do that. We've done it a lot already, more than dozens of times with many constituents to go to ministries and help them with issues. And some of them have been solved, I'm delighted to say. And that's one of the greatest joys of this job is, as you know, is to be able to help in those areas. So if there's ministerial issues that come up, I would prefer, and I talked to Cheryl about this, that those ministerial issues do come to our office. It probably helps us to advocate for you better. If there are ones less than that, certainly you could go to the government about those. And I can't come up with an example. Maybe we can talk about that together. And the last question is, one of the top issues facing Lacombe is the need for seniors housing. Any suggestions on how to approach this? And yes, I do have a suggestion because I've had a tour of the Lacombe Lodge so far, and have also met with Minister Nixon about this and have been in close contact with Mayor Hoover from Blackfalds, who, as you know, is chair of the Lacombe Foundation, overseeing this. And it's progressing very, very positively that we can see. And of course, we can never make a promise, but it looks like we're at the top of the list to get that replaced. So I'm very, very optimistic about it at this point. We'll see what happens in the next year, maybe even before Christmas. And that, of course, that's all I can offer at this point. So for Lacombe, it looks very, very good. As you know, we've also got Caris Village. We just met with Princes that are on the board there. And I think she said they are at 2/3, 3/4 capacity. And so there's still room in there, and their plans to go forward to build supportive living and to go forward into the next phases of that are full steam ahead. And that's really exciting to see as well. So that's just for Lacombe. It's really positive information, seniors housing wise for Lacombe. Unfortunately, it's not so positive for Ponoka or Blackfalds yet. So maybe we'll see that come. And as you know, Ramoka in Ponoka is they've got a lot of issues and a lot of aging infrastructure similar to Lacombe, maybe not quite as severe, but it's going to be a priority very, very soon for them. And of course, if you ask them, it's going to be the highest priority. So we've worked with them. I've had a tour of that, all of those facilities, and Minister Nixon is also aware of their situation there. Blackfelds has nothing. And I think when I met with them, probably their first priority is a new elementary Catholic school or middle school, and maybe before seniors housing at this point for them. But it's something we're certainly aware of. I think that's all I've got to report and to answer those questions. And if you have more, I'd be delighted to take any questions.
Well, thank you, Annalee Johnson. The reason that was on there for the seniors housing was obviously we have spoken out about it a few times, and we
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that it was forefront in your mind when you are in Edmonton, to make sure that it is brought up to the appropriate ministries. Again, we were happy to have a meeting. I suggest a very fruitful one. Reeve Shepherd and some area mayors, Gowdy and myself with Minister Nixon. And yes, it did go very well. However, it's a big province.
Yeah.
We want to remain at the top of the list. So please take every opportunity you can to remind all of the ministries involved, of which I expect that the Ministry of Health is another one that was outlined as a possible source of revenue, and one that would be interested in augmenting that facility as well.
I could speak to that. There's a doctor currently that should be working in Lacombe right now. I'm not sure if any of you are aware of that. It's a bit of a complicated issue, but the root of it is that we need to fast track this doctor in. We're fast tracking all the registered nurses in, but the same is not happening for our doctors. This doctor is here, is ready to go, and it's something about a 1 year and 2 year wait. It used to be 2, or used to be 1. Now they've upped it to 2, and she just kind of missed the cutoff. And they're saying, like, she's done, she's ready to go. And what's the problem here? You need doctors, but you're dragging your feet. So we have gone to the health ministry about this and are just waiting to hear back. From what we understand, it's a College of Physicians and Surgeons issue, and we're pushing hard to see them fast track these doctors.
That would be nice. As one individual in this community who does not have a personal physician, I would welcome an additional new doctor. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. One answer I don't think council got an answer in the past was the old Juniper Lodge site where they're at the truck stop. Was that gonna, and I don't expect you to have an answer, but was there going to be further retail commercial development there on behalf of the province? Because we opposed it because obviously we're trying to, it's a municipal tax generation if our Midway area was developed. That was one question, but having personally dealt with healthcare a lot because of my father, talking to the nurses, there's been several nurses come to Lacombe Hospital from the international program and challenging the competencies. So that's been successful. I've always stated that I've heard from a lot of parents that young people, they'll have an 85, 90% average and don't make the cut. And yet we're begging nurses and doctors to come from second, third world countries. It means totally backwards, in my opinion. Like we're begging for fast track and challenge competencies when, we don't have our own young people, when, to have a 90% average, that doesn't always make a good nurse. Also experienced in the EMS, the added transfer units to Red Deer has been a huge improvement for Lacombe. Heard that from a lot of EMS people, and having spent a lot of time in the hospital lately, I kind of correspond now. So that has been a vast improvement. I've heard nothing but positives so that's been awesome. So yeah, and I guess I've heard some numbers from the nurses saying Lacombe up to like 40% of our acute care capacity are patients waiting for long-term care placement. So that's a higher cost of delivery when you have RNs that could be done by lower scopes. So hence why we've advocated several times at AUMA as our municipality at the mic directly to the ministers. So thank you for advocating. So hopefully we can get to that. But yeah, we as our municipality, we kind of opposed to the commercial development of the truck stop
Mm,
because, and I can see them convenience for those stopping, but it takes away from
mhm.
our efforts to generate commercial retail. Thank you.
I don't have an answer about that truck stop. I've heard lots of information about it. It's a little bit here and there, so I'm not sure what the truth is. It's somewhere, probably somewhere in the middle. And as you know, it's been there for a long time and everyone's asking questions and there's not a lot of answers. Yeah, and thank you for your comments.
Councillor Conick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I sit on the Lacombe Foundation. We had a meeting today. I just wanted to clarify, it was brought up at the meeting that we had sent you some information, some of the links, some emails we'd forwarded on to. Did you in fact get those, or? Because usually Cheryl's very good. She's reply, yes, received or something, and we didn't get that. So I just wanted to make sure you got that information.
Can you be more specific which ones they were?
Well, we sent the link, for example, to the website so you can actually see the plan that's been developed. The
I
feasibility
haven't seen
study.
that.
Sorry?
I have not seen that.
Okay, no, that's great. Then I will talk to Melody tomorrow to make sure that
And I would love to
that
see that.
information, yeah, it's all there. Actually, the Lacombe Foundation website, you can actually, but
Okay,
I will make sure, because we were.
thank you.
Normally Cheryl does reply and say, yeah, got it or whatever, and we
Yeah.
didn't get that confirmation. So that was brought up today. So that's terrific. I'll make sure that those emails were sent to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for checking on that.
Does anyone have any additional questions or comments?
I could comment back to Councillor Ross that
Certainly.
as far as the nurses, I do believe they are opening up the schools and extending the seats that they've got in the nursing schools we've got here. I mean, that's 4 years away, right? So, but hopefully we'll catch up. I agree. Let's train more of our people with 85 and 90% averages. Yeah.
Well, very good. We appreciate you coming by to visit us, accepting our invitation, and I'm sure we'll be doing it again, either the end of the year or the first of the year at the latest for sure. And we will keep in contact in any event up until that point. So thank you once again for coming.
Thank you so much.
CEO Gowdy, we've only got 4 or 5 minutes here before our legislative starts. So a short item, in your opinion, would be which one of the requests for decision is likely to be?
I believe the tax penalty stands a chance of being a short one. The tax penalty forgiveness.
Thank you. So we will jump on our agenda to request for decision, item number 6.4, property tax penalty waiver request. Senior Manager McKinnon, could you take us through that item, please?
Good evening, Mayor Creasy and Council. Tonight I'm here to present a request from a property owner to cancel their 2023 late penalty fees. Attached to the report is an email from the property owner requesting 4 penalties for 4 properties to be reversed. And just to note, the tax notices were mailed out on May 26, 2023. The due date was June 30th, 2023, and otherwise a 10% penalty was applied. Administration has imposed the penalty as per the tax penalty and payment bylaw 379. Administration is recommending that council decline their request to reverse the late penalties.
Thank you, Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make that motion. The council decline the request to reverse late penalties.
Thank you. Any question or discussion? I think that can't say as I'm totally surprised there isn't. And I mean, I always feel for anybody that's faced with additional costs at this time or any other. However, these penalties are in place for a reason, and it makes it very difficult to waive them for some and not for others. Is the reason why it's largely been equally as successful in the past as I expect it will be this evening. But in any event, we do have a motion before us, so please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimous in favor of the decline of that request. Thanks, everyone. If I talk slowly for a half a minute here, will be 6 p.m. As you recall, we're legislated to not start any public hearings prior to the posted time, which is 6 p.m. However, they can be started afterwards. We do strive to have them as close as possible. I think these other items potentially are likely to be longer than just a few minutes. So I think we'll wait for which my clock just did tick over. Good, it is 6 p.m. So as consider public hearings and item 5.1 bylaw 400.49 for the land use bylaw amendment, the heritage updates. And for that public hearing, as mayor, I declare the statutory public hearing for bylaw 400.49 now open, and that this hearing is held pursuant to sections 7, 8, 230, 606, 640, and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended, and request our administrative assistant this evening to confirm the purpose of the public hearing, that the statutory public hearing notice was in fact advertised in the local newspaper, and that any written submissions received and not included in the public hearing agenda package are now read into the record.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and Council. The purpose of the public hearing is to allow the general public to provide input to the proposed amending bylaw 400.49, given first reading July 10th, 2023. Bylaw 400.49 proposes to amend land use bylaw 400. If approved, bylaw 400.49 will amend the heritage regulations and historic district area overlay, including changing the definition of a historic building from any principal building that is 50 years old to any principal building or place that is listed on the heritage inventory. The bylaw would also make amendments for clarification and to streamline permit processes. Per section 606 of the MGA requirements for advertising, a public hearing notice was advertised as shown on page 32 of the agenda. In the Lacombe Express, Thursday, August 24th, 2023, and Thursday, August 31st, 2023 editions. Mayor Creasy and Council, no written submissions were received, and the city received 0 registrations from members of the public to speak.
Thank you. Remind all persons giving oral presentations are to clearly state their name, and presentations are to be kept brief and to the point. The order for the statutory public hearing presentation will be as follows. First, our development officer or designate, followed by those in favor, then those opposed to the bylaw, and then any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard. And for those wishing to speak, just a reminder to use the microphone once again, please. So let's start off with our development officer. As he please, go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor Creasy. I'm pleased to be here to present bylaw 400.49 along with the Vice Chair of the Heritage Resource Committee, Mr. Peter Bousma. We are presenting bylaw 400.49, which is, oops, there we are, an amendment to the heritage sections of the bylaw. Now, this is a culmination of several steps that the Heritage Resource Committee and administration have worked on over the last year. So you may recall we've been here a few times already in 2023. The bylaw tonight will specifically amend the definition of a historic building. It will clarify and update the heritage guidelines and recommendations, regulations in the bylaw, and respond to some public engagement feedback that we received between first reading and tonight. The current bylaw, just as a refresher for council, defines a historic building as any building 50 years or older. And so there's just a photo of some buildings in Lacombe that right now would be defined as a historic building. They are subject to the historic district area overlay. In that overlay, demolition of those buildings is discretionary, so anything built prior to 1973. And there is a multi-step process during the review of that demolition permit. The proposed bylaw recommends that a historic building be defined as properties on the heritage inventory. And these are properties that have a statement of significance, which describes the historical elements, the historical background of that property, as well as the character defining features. And so today in the bylaw, in terms of buildings that are 50 years or older, there's over 900 in Lacombe that would qualify. On the heritage inventory tonight, if you counted them, you'll see there's 59. So it is coming to a much more focused group that have had the heritage research done and have a statement of significance prepared. These 59 buildings would remain subject to the historic district area overlay, where demolition would be discretionary, continue to be discretionary for these buildings with this multi-step process. And then also as part of bylaw 400.49, the conservation sections are being updated to identify that for buildings on the heritage inventory, we want to work with the owners to preserve the character defining elements as well. So if they come in for an addition or for major renovations, we would want to work with them to look at the character defining features and how those can be protected as the permits are issued. All of the 59 buildings are listed by their historic name and their civic and legal address in Schedule A, Table 14.5.1 in the bylaw, so that it's very clear to people, so that we're very transparent of what buildings are on the inventory. If you're looking at buying one, you know ahead of time that is the process, that's part of buying that property. Just for council's interest, this is a map showing the 59 historic buildings in Lacombe. Many are in the downtown, as you would expect, but as you can see, there's a few to the north, Burman University, for example, and then there's some on the west side and the south side of Lacombe that reflect the agricultural heritage of Lacombe, and then lots in our historic downtown. In terms of public engagement, we did consult with the landowners and the public. There were 2 open houses held in August with invitations going out to the property owners, as well as some advertising in the newspaper for the general public. The Heritage Resource Committee attended as well, and we discussed those on social, or advertised those on social media. In terms of input, we received a range of comments. The specific comments are in the council report on the agenda and our more detailed responses. But just in general, comments included concerns and questions from property owners, as well as inquiries about what would be the benefits of being on the inventory compared with being designated. We had some inquiries about becoming designated buildings, which we didn't expect. So that was very nice conversations we had. Some comments that were generally supportive of Lacombe's heritage, and then some concerns about additional rules being placed on or remaining on these properties, some questions around permits for renovations. Some properties have renovations going on right now, so they just wanted to know how that affected them, or in the future if they were planning renovations. And so we were able to talk with owners one-on-one about that. There was 2 specific items that came forward during public engagement, which administration is recommended being addressed through an adjustment to Schedule A, Table 14.5.1 in the proposed bylaw tonight. The first is changing the property site name for one of the properties to remove the family surname by request of the owner and referring to it just by the street location. The second adjustment recommended tonight is removing the 6 properties that have already been designated as municipal historic resources from the table. And so they were originally in the inventory, and since that time the owners have designated them, but they were still listed on the inventory in first reading. So we're recommending that those can be removed at this time. The table is in the agenda, but you can see here with the red what the changes are. So the 6 that have already been designated are the Fraser McDonald Building, the Young Residence, the Lacombe Blacksmith Shop, the Denicky block, which we just did earlier this year, the Cenotaph, and the St. Andrew's Church. So those are already designated. They can come off the inventory list here. And then the one property that is now being recommended to just be called 49 Avenue Residence. With that, administration is recommending that council give second reading to bylaw 400.49 as amended and third reading tonight as well. Thank you. And I don't know if Mr. Bausma has anything to add or not.
Thanks for the opportunity to have these amendments come. As chair, vice chair, and former chair of the Heritage Resources Committee, it's always nice to know that we have support from administration in what we do. And it is also nice to know that there is clarity and transparency through the revisions that are being proposed right now. One of the things that as I prepared for tonight, and I haven't read this much stuff since I was on council in preparation for a council meeting, that we need to, I lost my train of thought now. How did I do that? Oh, yes. We need to, as a Heritage Resources Committee, to educate the public a little bit further, particularly those who are on the inventory. And I see this as an opportunity, a great opportunity for us to move forward with that. But in the meantime, our committee has reviewed everything that has been presented on this, and we are no question in support of the changes that are being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bausma. Appreciate that. So do we have anyone that wishes to speak in favor of this bylaw 400.49? I've seen a bunch of people leaping towards the mic. One more time for people wishing to speak in favor. Seeing none, I will ask for anyone who wishes to speak in this item that is in opposition to bylaw 400.49. A second time for those who are opposed. An equal amount of takers there. Any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard, now is your time to step forward. I think we've covered all of our bases. I see no takers. I will declare that the public hearing of bylaw 400.49 to be closed at 6:12 p.m. I don't know if that's a record, but that's a fairly short one. And Manager Hackett, I think you might as well come up forward to a mic as well. We'll move on to requests for decision and move into item 6.1 on the agenda. Bylaw 6, or once again, bylaw 400.49, the land use bylaw amendment heritage updates proposed for second and possibly third reading this evening. Manager Hackett, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Creasy, members of council. It is recommended based on the work done to date and with the support of the Heritage Resources Committee that council gives second reading to bylaw 400.49 as amended and described earlier, and that council gives third reading to bylaw 400.49 as amended. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I would like to make that motion that council gives second reading to bylaw 400.49 as amended. But I also would like to add some comments to thank you for the open houses. They were very, very informative and well done. And I think citizens appreciated being able to come out and talk about that. But also to the Heritage Resources Committee, the good work that is going on between the city and the committee is to be, we really appreciate it, I think, or I appreciate it as a councillor. And I've had some contact with Miles Chakurta, and he too is very supportive of this. So I happily make that motion.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, just a couple of comments and questions. Definitely happy to see this coming. As somebody who sat on MPC with a few other members here, this was definitely a contentious issue that would come quite often, and it, quite often didn't need to, because exactly every 50-year-old building is not necessarily a heritage site. So very, very welcome news. Just a couple of questions. So one comment was made earlier about that you would know, homeowners or potential buyers would know that the property is on the inventory. How exactly would it be that they would know? Is it because they would be looking it up, on a bylaw, or would it be attached to the title, or is that just something that they would have to seek out, or it would be something that would be automatic?
Thank you, Councillor Hibbs. It will not be on title. That's only for designated buildings that they are put on title, but it will be listed by address in the land use bylaw. So they would need to be looking at the property in the land use bylaw when they looked for zoning or other information. It would be there as well. We are also in the process of updating the City of Lacombe website so that the heritage properties are more clearly identified. There is some information on the designated ones coming first, and then working once the inventory, if it was approved tonight, then we will be working on the website to update that as well.
Okay, and then my only other question, if I may, so of course, these new rules would apply only to the inventory and the municipally designated, but not necessarily, or not the places of interest list. So now, of course, within that list, there may be buildings that probably should be on the inventory, but we just don't have either enough information or whatever the case may be. So I was just also asking if it's the intention of either administration or the committee to be potentially reaching out to more of those buildings that are on the POIL, so that an SOS can be fully developed and then potentially be added to the inventory. Is that kind of the goal, or is it just sort of sit until the next review in 10 years or whatever the time frame may be?
Well, Councillor Hibbs, it certainly would be my goal to reach out to those building owners to be able to do that research, or to get more information on the integrity and significance of their building. I don't know that the committee has fully discussed that yet, so I don't want to speak for the committee, but that certainly was the intent, that the POIL, or the places of interest list, then would feed into the inventory, and to see that inventory grow. I don't know if, Peter, you would have anything to add to that.
It's a difficult thing to answer, partly because we just went through a review, as you're aware, and we added some 15 places to the POIL because that's the funding that we had available to us. And we felt that that was an acceptable number, although the reality is that there's more properties there that would probably very nicely, comfortably fit in the POIL list. So it's a matter of working with the property owners when they decide that they want to do something, either changes to their house, or even discussing a designation. We would be open to any discussion related to that. I mean, right now we're going through a designation process of 2 buildings. And we're excited, 1 house, 1 commercial building, and we're excited that we're at that particular point. But there could be more that come from the POIL list, and it's a matter of education component, another one, a reaching out, and we have a long-standing item on our agenda that is called promoting designation, and we talk about it at every meeting, and so we all have opportunities to talk to property owners, et cetera, as we live. And therefore, we have opportunities then to bring them the exciting process of looking at a designation. So it's a time thing. And yeah, I'd love to see more on there, but it'll happen. It's just in time.
Thank you for that explanation. And I think, in fact, it is a matter of time. I for one, fully endorse these changes. It's nice to see 59 focused properties rather than a shotgun approach merely on date, because that becomes unworkable. And I think some people perhaps fail to appreciate the amount of work and effort that goes on, effort that goes into making up these lists and the designations, both administratively and certainly from all of the crew on the HRC. So thank you for that work. Hopefully this allows you to be more focused on those known very important ones. Certainly by no means we want to put out there to the public that that's the end of the list and it's over, because that's far from the truth. Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Sorry, my own clarification. And so the 59 properties you've identified, you have, and I think I misunderstood you, Mr. Rossman, but they have been approached and they know that they're on the, okay, sorry, I just wanted to have to certain of that because Councillor Hibbs asked an excellent question. I know in my profession, it would be helpful to know whether or not that building is on the list or not. And I guess we have to rely on the homeowner, but, and I have to double check on this, but I believe through our system, we can get the tax information on homes in Lacombe. And I can't help but wonder if it would be helpful that it would be a note there that also says, oh, by the way, this is one of the designated, because that could have further ramifications in the house buying process. So, yeah, you partially answered that through Councillor Hibbs, but I just wanted any further clarification.
I will just add that yes, to the first part of the question, yes, all of the owners of these 59 properties, and actually it was more because the ones that were on the original list that were already designated, some of them got letters. So they all got a letter, they all got a copy of their statement of significance, so they know what was significant about it. They got the photographs that are part of that, and they were invited to the open house or given information to come into City Hall or phone us. So they're all aware. And then the second part of that question was around whether it would be on the tax notice. We could put something in the tax file, but it will be listed in the land use bylaw. So anyone involved in selling a property or researching properties in Lacombe can open up table, I forget the number now, 14.51, and those properties will be listed there. And then in the future, if more are added, then we would have to amend that list. But they will be all listed there with their historic name and with the civic address and the legal address.
In addition to that, Manager Hackett, you had a helpful PDF in there with the marked in red. Will that be referenced in that document as well? I mean, as much as the actual address is great, having that visual reference for some people might be of more use.
That the map, we can have that on our website. At this time, it wasn't part of the bylaw package to go into the land use bylaw, but we certainly plan to have that map available for the public.
Anyone else? Forgot who brought forth the motion. Councillor Hoekstra did, and that is up for your voting now, please. That is unanimously in favor. Thank you. Is there anyone that is interested in doing perhaps an additional reading or no? Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll move that council gives third reading to bylaw 400.49 as amended. And I'd also like to say I enjoyed the open house. It was very nice. Good eats there and drinks. I like that. And I was amazed at the enthusiasm of the people that were there and the information they got from our administration, which I felt was really helpful for them, and they knew the direction that taking their home in this, making it a heritage home, would affect how they can deal with it. So I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it, and look forward to more of those in the future.
Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, I was just, so as a realtor, we go to a site called Pillar 9, and I can pull up the taxes for any of the houses that are for sale in Lacombe right now. And I'm looking at a home right now, and it'd be wonderful if there were a line here somewhere that just said places of interest or something. And I don't know if that can be done or not, but some realtors are not as quick to go to land use bylaws as we'd like. And it can cause some problems down the road, but it would be wonderful. We have to access this information, for example, to list the property. It'd be nice if it could be added there somewhere. Thank you.
So is that a suggestion for administration or a suggestion for the local realtor group?
Well, I guess we get this information from the various communities. So we have to come from municipality to make that addition, because we don't know.
CEO Gowdy?
So I think I do understand what you're asking. I don't know the system very well. We'll look in to see whether that pillar system can have custom information like that put in. And if not, we can look at having an active, just that segment of the list, places of interest list on the website as a standalone thing so that it doesn't have to go to the land use bylaw. And then we'll distribute that to the realtor groups that are active within Lacombe.
Thank you, if I may. And it's not the end of the world. I know I'm asking as a realtor, but I know, for example, one of these houses that is on the list was for sale not so long ago. And when I walked into that house, I thought, well, this is, yeah, it's old and it's nice, but it needs to come down. But it's on the list. So it'd be nice to, have that clarity, especially. Thank you.
Anyone else? I think before you have the vote for third reading, so please go ahead and vote now. Oh, one moment before you vote. I'm sorry. The last minute buzz in here. Councillor Hoekstra, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I would like clarification in response to what Councillor Koenig said. The 59 properties on the list are not slated for demolition. Like, it is suggested that those properties would not be demolished. Is that not correct? This is supposed to correct the process where a house that should be demolished is on a list. Is that right? Did that make sense?
Yes, members of council, the 59 properties, it's discretionary to demolish, so an owner can apply to demolish, but the current process would remain in place for those properties. So they would end up at Municipal Planning Commission. There would be a recommendation from the Heritage Committee, and often the Heritage Committee, especially because these are the 59 most significant in Lacombe, the Heritage Committee might be very thorough in their response to a demolition request. The other 800 and some properties in Lacombe that are over 50 years old would just have a standard apply for a demolition permit like any age property would in Lacombe. There might still be some. We didn't necessarily go inside some of these homes, so I can't comment on the condition of the homes inside, but from the outside and from the exterior and from the assessments, they were all found to have good heritage, high heritage integrity.
No problem. Thank you for that. Good discussion. Please go ahead and vote on third reading for bylaw 400.49. And that is unanimously in favor. Obviously, some very positive changes and updates. Thank you both. Manager Mitchell, if you'd care to make your way up to the presentation area. Item 6.2, whistle cessation and the next steps involved. I'll give you an opportunity to get your documents prepared there and ready to go, and then we can proceed with that. And whenever you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy, and good evening, members of council. Tonight, I am updating council on the whistle cessation process to date and presenting options to cease whistles at several of the train crossings here in Lacombe. There are 5 rail crossings within the city boundary and 3 crossings in the county that are in close proximity to city limits. Over the last 5 years, the city has completed safety assessments of the crossing and implemented recommendations made by an engineering consultant. These recommendations included minor line painting and signage adjustments and a more major rail crossing upgrade on Wolf Creek Drive. Table 1 of this report outlines the milestones and dates in more details. At the request of the city, last month, a representative from CP Rail came out and reviewed the 5 crossings within the city limits to determine their eligibility for whistle cessation. 3 of the 5 crossings were approved for whistle cessation, and the 4th was approved pending the installation of a pedestrian crossing. The pedestrian crossing is on Wolf Creek Drive, adjacent to Highway 2A, and it was not identified in the original safety assessment report. However, last year, based on a recommendation from administration, council identified a pedestrian connection to the Len Thompson Fish Pond as a priority and included a budget for design and construction in 2023. Design is underway and required coordination with CP Rail. Now that they are aware of the project, CP Rail requires the completion of the pedestrian crossing before stopping whistles at this location. Construction of this path was planned for this fall, but the city's contractor is already at capacity with other more critical projects here in the city, so construction has been deferred to 2024. The 5th and final crossing that was not approved for whistle cessation is the Highway 12 crossing adjacent to the Highway 2 intersection near Tim Hortons. 4 years ago, the city met with an engineering consultant and CP Rail on site to review this crossing. CP agreed with the engineer's recommendations at the time, but also expressed concerns about the risk of vehicles queuing on the rail tracks. The consultant made several recommendations to improve the pedestrian crossing and extend a fence on private property to prevent shortcutting, and to improve signage to deter queuing on the tracks. The pedestrian crossing and fencing improvements required cooperation from CP Rail, but they recommended waiting to see if more extensive measures would be required to address the queuing issues. Administration implemented the signage and painting improvements, but since then there have been at least 2 incidents where a train has struck a vehicle that had stopped on the tracks while waiting for a red light. These incidents clearly indicate that to CP that queuing on the tracks has not been addressed, and they will not issue whistle cessation until more significant changes are made. The changes that they have proposed to eliminate queuing are to move the stop bars and traffic signals to the east side of the tracks, effectively extending the intersection by 50 meters. Internal estimates for the changes needed for whistle cessation range from $400,000 to $800,000, but no firm quotes have been provided. While these changes would address the queuing issues, they will have negative impacts on the intersection efficiency for traffic and would increase vehicle congestion at an already busy intersection. The intersection has one of the highest accident rates in the city and is quickly approaching capacity. The city's 2020 traffic master plan predicts that in its current configuration, the Highway 12 and 2A intersection will exceed capacity when the city's population reaches 17,500. This is estimated to occur within about 10 years. At that time, a redesign of the intersection will be required to meet traffic needs. Administration is concerned that investing only in the intersection modifications needed to achieve whistle cessation will accelerate the congestion challenges. For this reason, we recommend that the city take a long-term view of this critical intersection that looks at solutions to increase safety, achieve whistle cessation, address congestion issues, and address safety concerns at the adjacent Highway 12 and 46th Street intersection, which is another intersection here in town with a very high accident rate. We also recommend they consider reviewing access management on the Highway 12 corridor in that area at the same time. This larger project is not currently included in the 2024 budget, but administration estimates the cost to identify solutions to achieve these objectives is approximately $150,000 to $200,000. As noted earlier, there are also 3 additional rail crossings in Lacombe County that are in close proximity to the city. Administration believes that whistles at these locations could be heard within city limits. 2 of these crossings were upgraded to bells and gates in the last couple of years and should qualify for whistle cessation. The third crossing is a stop sign controlled crossing and would not qualify for whistle cessation without significant and costly upgrades. Administration has proposed 5 options for council moving forward. Option 1, do not pursue whistle cessation. This option is not recommended as much of the work to cease whistling at 4 out of the 5 crossings is already complete, and administration would still need to finish the work on the pedestrian crossing and fence extension at the Highway 12 and 2A intersection, as this crossing does not meet Transport Canada's standards. I will note that there is adequate budget in place currently to address these 2 changes. Option 2 is to pursue whistle cessation at 4 of the 4 approved crossings. This option is also recommended. Once the pedestrian crossing is completed at Wolf Creek Drive and Highway 2A, administration will begin the formal notification process to cease whistles at 4 out of the 5 crossings. Whistles would still be operated at the Highway 12 crossing for now, but whistle cessation could be applied for at a later date if changes were made. Option 3 is to remove the westbound queuing on the west side of the tracks at the Highway 12 2A intersection following CP's recommendations. If selected, administration would include these intersection changes required for whistle cessation only in the 2024 capital budget. Option 4 is to develop long-term options for the Highway 12 and Highway 2A intersection. If selected, administration would bring this project to the 2024 budget workshop for council's consideration. The intersection review will occur in 2024 and recommend future modifications and triggers to address both whistle cessation and capacity issues. This project does not include detailed design or construction costs, which would be identified as part of the option development process. Option 5 is to addresses the whistles outside of the city boundary. Here, these crossings in the county are outside of the city's jurisdiction. However, if council would wish to proceed, administration will approach the county to discuss applying for whistle cessation at 34th Street and Range Road 270. The crossing at Range Road 270A requires extensive upgrades and would not be approved at this time. This would also help reduce the number of whistles heard within city limits. I'm happy to answer any questions council may have at this time.
Thank you for that report, Manager Mitchell. We appreciate it. Just so I can better understand, when I initially looked at this, I thought that the recommendation of option 3 to remove that queuing heading westbound and basically moving it further east
Yes.
seemed like a very logical thing to do, but we do not have any costs on that as yet. Is that correct?
That Mayor Creasy is the estimate of between $400,000 and $800,000. And what that would entail is relocating the traffic signals to the other side of the tracks, or the traffic signal controlling the westbound lane to the other side of the tracks, and then redoing the signal timing for the entire intersection. And so the congestion concerns there is obviously if you have a semi truck or something like that that's starting when that light turns 50 meters further back than it is today, that increases the time it takes for traffic to move through that intersection. Right now, that's a single straight through and left turning lane. And so with a single straight through and left turning lane, if you have a transport truck lined up first in line, it could take a while to clear the traffic that has accumulated in the backlog behind it.
Thank you. So for those kind of dollars involved, obviously a lot more involved than repainting a stop line.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing that struck me was, so then for CP, somehow they're suggesting that by removing whistles, this would have miraculously stopped the 2 unfortunate incidents that occurred in the last several years. And I find that a little odd, just that the 2 are related.
If I may, I think their concern is that without the whistles, there would have been more incidents.
Right.
So I think that that's their concern, is the whistles allowed vehicles to move off the track knowing that a train was bearing down on them, versus the 2 that weren't preventable for whatever reason, the vehicles didn't move off the track.
So even though we have proof that they're ineffective, they're saying that for most of the cases, they probably were. I get it, yeah. Excuse me. Councillor Gullickson, please.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Thank you for this. It's about time we got at it again. The changes at Highway 12 and 2A, I mean, you can say it's for whistle cessation, but the reality is if there's been that many accidents there, it's just a matter of time before that's a tanker truck or something that becomes a major issue at that intersection. So to me, it's not a whistle cessation issue, it's a safety issue that we need to address that. So I'm fully in favor of looking at that because that intersection scares me to death with Tim Hortons and all the other infrastructure around it. So the safer we can make that, the better. It does seem like CP Rail is changing rules all the time on us, like always. But I totally agree with going for the 4 that we have. I'm not sure about the ones going out east. Do we have much traffic at night on that? Do we know? We don't know what their schedule is, I don't imagine. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of traffic going east, and blowing whistle out there is not the same as blowing it on Highway 2A and Woodland Drive as far as disruption to our community. So I would definitely encourage us to go after the 4 and work on getting the Highway 12 2A intersection improved.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Option 2 still demonstrates this to our citizens a significant progress on cessation. And I think the information would be justified that obviously 12 and 2A is our highest traffic, is thus with higher traffic is higher risk. I do find it kind of double standard, the CP and CN, the speed that they go through town. If there is a derailment, it's Tim Hortons just won't exist anymore. So I think that's kind of a double standard on their part with the speed that they go through town. If we ever have a derailment, it's going to be, a major mass casualty incident. So it's kind of a double standard, but I think that's for the progress. If you could succeed in getting 4 out of 5, I think that demonstrates a significant success. And I think the information that we pass on to citizens that is the highest traffic would be information well received, that we've done our best efforts. So I would fully support option 2.
Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yes, I think this is a long time coming. I see some people in the gallery that certainly have had some conversations about this. And this is just one of those things, again, where, a group in the community can make things happen, because that's sort of how this came to be. It was people in the community getting frustrated with the increased traffic, increased noise. Yes, the tracks have been there ever since the inception of the city, but of course it's gotten busier, it's gotten louder, and that's kind of the problem. So I would like to go ahead and make the motion that council directs administration to initiate the whistle cessation process for the 4 eligible rail crossings within the city boundary. But before I relinquish the mic here, I would like to ask, just in reference more to, of course, that one intersection that's being omitted at this time, if perhaps administration would like to make a comment on the South Connector route. That is something that's a little ways out, but I think could potentially have a large impact on dealing with that congestion, one of the significant issues of that intersection. So there's hope for that intersection. I feel like it's important that we don't say that this is just not ever going to happen, because, our community is going to change going forward. We talk about these intersections, or these rail crossings towards the east that don't have a lot of residential area around them, but they will, because that's the way that we're growing. So again, we have to look long term. So yes, I would like to invite administration to make a comment on, for example, the South Connector.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity, Councillor Hibbs. So the South Connector Road is a part of our master plan. It's included in the intermunicipal development plan, and it's a route around the south end of Lacombe that connects kind of the east to the west side. and it's been kind of in a conceptual state for some time. We are currently working with the research stations, Olds College, the Canadian Research Station, in an ongoing working group to kind of assess some routing options. The research stations are the major landowners in the area, and they have a very strong connection to the community and the roots of the community. And so we're working with them to identify what might be the best possible route for that ring road. One of the concerns with that ring road in relation to this intersection, just is in relation to timing. You had alluded to it, Councillor Hibbs, in terms of the ring road being at least currently thought to be a 20-year implementation or construction. So it's not for some time. And then the congestion that we're talking about at that intersection, we're projecting that to come to fruition or to become more of a concern in about half that time. And so just depends on the timing of those two projects. But certainly you're right, there's a concurrent project regarding the ring road that is being worked through right now. We do expect to have that completed Q1, Q2 of next year. And so sometime in the first half of next year, we'll be coming back to council with some more information on that project.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I have prepared some words here just so that I can get it all out. This project obviously started well before my arrival on this council. I'm grateful for the work that has been done so far to get us to this point. Clearly, it is not a quick and easy process, and we can be thankful to have partners in the county as well who are willing to work with us in the additional crossings outside our control. It is promising that we are at this point with these improvements, and they will not only benefit through whistle cessation, but in general safety for our community as well. Unfortunately, it seems that we can't have it all at this time, and I believe that is the right decision to take a longer term approach for the Highway 12 and 2A crossing. A proactive approach like this will benefit all users, city staff, and the councils in the future. Councillor Gullickson has said it here already that this is not just a whistle issue, this is a safety concern. In regards to this crossing, as much as I would like to see a long-term solution, I'm also interested in seeing safe pedestrian crossing for it. Just recently, I saw our local police service supporting a youth group walking from the theater in which they blocked the roads in both directions so that children could cross the road safely. So I think if we can still work on finding a way to improve pedestrian crossings in the meantime, that would be a priority for me. Thank you.
Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, I like everyone in this room is very excited about the fact that we're at least getting 4 out of 5. As the mayor would know, this is something that we talked about 12 years ago already, and it's a long time coming. So thankfully we're here now. I support all 3 motions that have been put forth. As far as approaching the county goes, yeah, great if they do. If they don't, so be it. We've done what we need to do as far as we're concerned in our jurisdiction. So that's the priority, but if there's no harm in asking, for sure. And yeah, I agree with Councillor Gullickson. I don't think it's that whole intersection is, for lack of a better word, is a bit of a gong show, whether there's a train running through it or not. So it's what we can do there to address the safety issue there. And yeah, it's probably going to cost a few bucks, but we need to address that sooner rather than later, because we can talk about the South Ring Road all we want, but the mayor will tell you too that we talked about that 12 years ago as well. And so we're not any closer to seeing that resolved. But we should and can do what we can to improve safety at 12 and 2A for sure. So yeah, it's terrific to all 3 of these motions. I can't wait to vote on all. Thank you.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just my question with the motion put forward, question to administration, will the administration still make the request to the county to request whistle cessation at the controlled intersections as well? Because in my opinion, you never know until you ask, because being With Milton and 12, for example, you're still at the north end of, it's at the north end of the city. I'm sure you can still hear the whistle from with the city developing to the north. You could still hear, have that one where at the 34th Street controlled, is that gated or not? Sorry, my apologies if it is or not.
So for clarity, Councillor Ross, any of these options or any that council may choose to come up with on their own are open for voting. And if that is so, after this current motion is voted on, if that's something that you feel strong about, I think that is probably outlined in option 5. But it's not, unless we give that direction, I think it would be an unreasonable expectation to have administration do that. Not a problem at all. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Chrissy. I don't have anything to add, so I would like to make the motion that council direct.
I think that we have a motion
Oh, I
already
apologize. Okay.
before us, which was to pursue whistle cessation at the 4 approved crossings within city limits, correct? Right. And that is on your machines now. Please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimously approved. Thank you. Are there others for consideration? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Obviously, option 2 is unanimous, but I would just like to add for further direction to administration for option 5, if for administration to approach the city, approach the county to apply for whistle cessation at the mentioned crossings.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional comments or concerns with this motion? Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. The motion is put before us, just speaks to 34th Street and Range Road 270. I think we should limit it to those two because they have the higher probability of being passed, but if they are gated, that's why they're yeah. If we try to include Milton or 27A, I don't think we'll meet the same success.
Yeah, it was my understanding this was for the 2 that were so-called ready to go, as opposed to the county incurring a bunch of additional costs.
Sorry, my apologies, but for whichever ones are the highest probability of succeeding with the gated crossings, if that makes better clarification. Thank you.
Administrative Assistant, yeah.
Please confirm the motion.
You certainly can.
That council directs administration to request Lacombe County to apply for whistle cessation at 34th Street and Range Road 270 crossings.
That is the way that it was hoped to be worded, yes. And it reads that way now at 34th Street and Range Road 270. That was quick. Thank you very much. Please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimous as well, in favor. Thank you. Do we have any others for consideration? Councillor Connick.
Yep, no, I thought maybe someone else had beat me to the punch. No motion with that.
You're the only one on the board.
I would so move that council direct administration to include the cost of develop options to address the long-term needs of the Highway 1228 intersection in the 2024 capital budget for council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dallas, my apologies for reading the wrong name on the queue. Anything additional you'd like to add?
No additional comments. Thank you.
Anyone else? In that case, please go ahead and vote. Lots of approved motions on this item. That is unanimously in favor as well. Thank you. Thank you, Manager Mitchell. Assuming that concludes this issue for this evening. No additional twists. Director Thompson, you're going to be up next on item 6.3 for snow clearing, cost of level of service changes, please.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy, and good evening, Council. Following the service level review earlier this year, Council had requested some costing for possible changes to the service levels. The changes have been discussed or been presented on in the past, and there are links in the Council report to previous Council reports that go into those changes in detail. But the essence of one of the major changes that are being contemplated is the change from the practice of windrowing snow throughout the community in the winter months to hauling it away where it is feasible and makes sense to do so. We are providing updated costs tonight. We have gone through a process which is outlined in the Council report to estimate these costs, and are currently projecting that they would cost $119,325 to make this change. The other question that Council had were related to the costs of bringing in or allowing for the snow clearing of outdoor skating services on weekends and on statutory holidays. And so the Parks Department has looked at those costs, primarily supported through casual positions that would be deployed to make that change. And they're estimating that the cost would be for that service change would be $14,700. And then there was a subsequent smaller section where Council had asked for the costs to incorporate or upgrade the snow clearing from being windrowed to being hauled away in front of two specific locations, one on 53rd Street and one on Telford Crescent. And the cost to incorporate that into the city snow clearing schedule is nominal, $829, but certainly that's something that could be absorbed into the city's budget if Council's direction was to make that change. One thing we wanted to highlight, though, was that the developing a budget for snow clearing is challenging. It requires a degree of financial risk from the municipality, and I don't mean that from a we can't afford it point of view. I mean that the likelihood of us being close to the budget in any given year is very difficult. And so when we look back historically, we can see what our budget target has been, and most years we're actually less than half of that. But then some years we're over. And so just to kind of give a sense of kind of how price sensitive the expenses can be, we had one snow event in November last year was responsible for half our expenses for that snow clearing year. And so one event could be half our budget. So it's difficult to predict when those events will happen, how they occur, how much snow occurs all at once. And so to tie up a significant amount of money into a budget that most likely won't be fully utilized in that year is something that we put some thought to. And so we, in terms of our recommendation and on a budget adjustment to accommodate the snow clearing change, and that being the one to remove snow instead of windrowing it, we are recommending that Council consider, if they were to go with that change, to consider only adding a $60,000 budget increase to the snow clearing department, or to the roads department for snow clearing. This is just to account for that that likelihood of that budget being actually utilized fully in any given year. So certainly that can be up or down. That's entirely up to Council's discretion. When we are deploying our snow clearing crews, we are following the policy, and so our guideline is achieving the policy targets and deploying the resources that are necessary to achieve those targets. And so some years it costs more than others due to the weather and the nature of the snow event. And so for that reason, it's primarily a matter of kind of tolerance of being under or over budget that council has on that line item. We do target achieving those service level targets every year. We wouldn't, for example, stop snow clearing if we projected us hitting a budget mid event or something like that. And so we're trying to still achieve those targets regardless. So I wanted to provide this information to council and seek some direction on whether council wishes this funding to be brought forward to the budget deliberations for further consideration. And so certainly if there's any questions that council has for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Appreciate it, Director Thompson. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Quick question on budgeted funds. So if you budget $100,000 for snow clearing and you spend 60, the other 40 goes into where? Goes in
reserves. CEO Gowdy.
So anything that wasn't expended would end up as part of your annual surplus, and ultimately council decides where to put that surplus. Typically, it would go to the general capital reserve or your operating reserve.
So is there a possibility to, like, we're going to be expanding the budget by quite a bit, because I feel like this will probably go through, whether I agree with it or not, that if that funding is there can be a special fund set up that kind of stands alone as a snow removal fund, and then it starts to build its own. It's almost like an insurance policy.
Yeah, you could definitely, separate from the normal operating reserve, you could set up a sort of like a snow clearing contingency reserve. It would function the same, but you'd have maybe a clear line of sight on it then, rather than it being rolled into the general operating reserve.
That's what I would like to see, if we increase this budget that much, to have that, where those funds would go specifically to snow removal. So we'd see if it was building or what was happening with it, and we could still adapt to high event years from our other funds that we have available to us in our surplus. So it would just be a way of seeing where this money is going and how it's building up. Thank you.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I would like to make the motion that council directs administration to bring the estimated cost of changing the snow clearing service level to clear outdoor skating surfaces on weekends to the 2024 budget deliberations for further consideration. I support this motion because that's probably one of my first interactions with the city was years ago, wondering why, on holidays and weekends, we can't access the beautiful outdoors in a way that we can on a Monday afternoon at 2 when nobody's available to go do it. Anyhow, so I love that. So I really support that motion.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. In regard to Councillor Hoekstra's motion there, I support that. I feel like that is an admirable use of funds and benefit to our city. Thank you to the administration for putting this report together and researching these figures. Obviously, it is very difficult to do, and if you were, bang on every year, I might be more invested in gambling. But so thank you. There is no doubt that our residents would greatly appreciate this increase in service level for the snow removal. However, I'm not sure that they would be as grateful for the additional costs for this service. In my mind, we have 3 options to achieve this service increase: increase rates and increase snow removal service levels. Number 2, leave rates and continue with the current snow service levels. Or 3, reduce other service levels and increase snow service levels. Out of these 3 options, I can only support the 2 of leave rates and continue with current levels, or reduce some other service level and increase snow removal subsequently. The current climate of cost increases is a continual burden, and we don't need to exacerbate it further with a service that will likely still be unsatisfactory to residents. As much as I think people would love to see the snow gone, there will still be continuous complaints about the speed in which it happens, or somehow somebody will still feel like theirs never got done. So I don't support this change in service.
Councillor Konik.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just a couple of comments. First off, these motions just talk about bringing estimated costs back to budget deliberations, and that's when we'll hash it out. So I'll support both of them in that respect, and then of course we'll decide at budget time as to how much. I'm still in favor of maybe just taking baby steps, maybe this time, and I'd love to see a number of what it would be just to remove snow now from all crescents and closes, for example. That maybe, you know, we did the move from all areas that don't have sidewalks, for example, and last year, maybe now we include all areas of town that are crescent or close, for example. Let's see what that number looks like. So maybe that can be done. As far as and as far as Councillor Hoekstra's motion that's been made, I agree with that. But again, maybe only as far as Crana Lake is concerned. I mean, the other ones maybe we don't do in the weekend, but at least do Crana. So someplace, so people have some place to go. You know what I'm saying? Like I see a big uptake on Crana, but at Royal Oak, where I tend to skate, maybe it's not as busy, for example. So maybe that's an amendment we can look at as far as those two go. But those are my comments. Thank you.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. One thing would be kind of curious is if from the Public Works manager would be if the snow was removed, would we be saving on any operational costs as removing ice from drains that are plugged and so forth? That is a spring added cost to operations that may be saved. Just throwing ideas out there if that is a added expense by not taking it away. That is the accumulation of ice on drains that has to be extra man hours that would maybe contribute to a cost savings.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. So yeah, we've discussed in the past, there are several other areas in addition to that one where there are some cost savings. However, I'm not necessarily sold that they're worth administrative time to calculate them. But there are definitely cost savings. And the one thing that we do need to remember is the impact on our staff. The single biggest complaint that we get throughout the year is from this item. So I think we need to consider that as well when the appropriate time comes. When it comes to the cost, it was interesting, the numbers that came about here. In fact, I realize this is a relatively focused snapshot of time here the last 3 years. Some 80,000 extra in 2020 and 90,000 extra in 2021. So in fact, the citizens have been paying for this service, just not getting it. It's not to say that the money disappears, but it's no secret that I've been a big fan of this from the impact in our community and also the costs, financial and to staff as well over the years. And I think it's high time that we need to put this into action and add to the limited area that we do currently and continue that across the city where practical. There's always going to be some that it doesn't make sense to remove, but the vast majority and realize hopefully some of those cost offsetting measures that you referred to, Councillor Ross, as well as many others. Councillor Konik.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. And I forgot to mention it. And if we do go down that route where we say, okay, citywide, I do like Councillor Gullickson's suggestion that if it's 100K every year or whatever the number is, and we have a low snowfall here, yeah, let's bank that remainder. So that when we do have a year where it's, it's gangbusters and there's so much snow, then we're not over budget. We're drawing from a reserve that's been established. So I do quite like that idea, because that way, then there's always, it can offset, if we have a heavy year, great, we have reserve funds, kind of thing, perhaps. So.
Very good. So we have a motion before us with respect to the clearing of skating surfaces, exterior skating surfaces. And that is on your machines there. Now I don't have the entire wording here. Perhaps our administrative assistant, Post, if you could reread that motion so everyone's clear. You haven't got the two mixed up or whatever here, please.
Thank you, Mayor Creaser. The motion that's active right now is that council directs administration to bring the estimated cost of changing the snow clearing service level to clear outdoor skating services on weekends to the 2024 budget deliberations for further consideration.
Thank you. Anything additional before we vote? Please go ahead and do so. And that is unanimously in favor. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So of course, that was the motion to do with the skating, even though we did kind of wander into the other topic while that motion was on the floor. I do have a question about the wording in the memo. It seems to reference when talking about the snow removal costs from roads. It talks about the dollar value, the 60,000. This is the amount administration carried into the preliminary 2024 operating budget to acknowledge the proposed changes to the service levels only. And then earlier it mentions about when it was being considered what the impacts would be from the skating. So to me, this is how I read it, and I would like some correction if I'm misunderstanding it. So assuming, which we just did, support the skating motion, and assuming that we also support the other one to do with roads, my question is, the preliminary budget has been created. Has administration factored in within the threshold of the operating increase that we asked for, the increase in budget, this 60,000, but did not do that for the parks impact, so the skating surfaces? Do you understand what I'm saying? It looks to me when I'm reading this saying that when the preliminary budget has been put forward, I'm making the assumption that that was within, the boundaries that we had set as what the target was, that the roads were factored in, but the parks, the rink cleaning was not. Is that correct?
CEO Gotti?
Not really. It's a bit of apples and oranges. The roads clearing one is largely a contracted service, and so it was included as a identified item in the August budget forecast. The clearing of the rinks is actually an increased salary cost. And so while there was a number carried for the increased salary cost within that operating budget forecast, if you recall, I'd made a comment that, we're carried at 2% staff expansion to correspond to anticipated growth, but really we had requests from managers and directors for about just over 4% expansion. So yes, that is there's money in there, and we had assumed this would be a high priority one for council. But until we hear from you, that's gonna kind of dictate whether that makes the final cut or not.
Sorry.
Hence the reason why there was also a recommendation there to consider an amount somewhat less than the projected rolling average annual cost, the 60 or 80,000 as opposed to the 120. Is that a fair assessment? Very good. Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I move that council directs administration to bring the estimated costs of changing the snow clearing service level to hauling off-site where feasible to the 2024 budget deliberations for further consideration. Meg, I'll follow with a comment. Is that okay?
Certainly.
So there's been this discussion about creating a reserve. I guess I'm asking administration, is it wise to create small reserves for different things, or doesn't it just go into general operating and it's there? Why snow?
I mean, I think that it feels good. It's nice to know the identified one, but no, you read my mind was, well, that's what the operating reserve is. Otherwise, you can get into this thing of like, well, a snow clearing one, and maybe there's a CAO severance one that will, have one thing in there, and maybe we'll have we don't collect all the taxes 1 year, and you can get this portfolio of small reserves that really, since council is the one that is ultimately authorizing withdrawals from reserves, it is to your discretion how you use them, and you're reliable, good judgment people. And so you'll use it for what you see fit. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Unless you start getting into this scenario where you're managing like a dozen different accounts for really one operating reserve surplus. But it is nice to know you have enough money to deal with any snow clearing things. Director Thompson made a comment that, well, we're not going to stop halfway through clearing snow. But actually, if you watch the news across Canada, there are municipalities, and I'm always shocked at how they get themselves into this spot of, actually, we can't clear snow anymore. We're done clearing snow for the season or something. And I think, how did that happen? So if you fear that, which it is a possibility, yeah, having a dedicated reserve is not a bad thing. You have a healthy operating reserve, so it's fine that way.
I think that was my initial thought too. We just went through an exercise to try and consolidate some of these many reserves that we had, some of which were kind of pointless. I think more importantly, if I'm understanding Councillor Gullickson correctly, is we want some accountability to see where this money's going is perhaps more important than having a set aside, another number to count, more work for our financial team to look after. That isn't the point. It's knowing where that money is going and how much it's costing each year. As much as we all like to look at those last 3 years and suggest that, yeah, things are going to actually work out pretty rosy considering that money was already set aside for that specific purpose anyway. But it would be nice to generally know that. On another note, I don't see this service any different than any other. If there's a catastrophic year when I think we pitch in and do what we can to mitigate those circumstances as best we can within our means, just like we do with any other major wreck, like when we had flooding one year because of inadequate pipes and spent don't quote me, $6 or $8 million. Those are kind of unforeseen things that can happen. But I think whenever you're adjusting a level of service, it's good oversight for council to watch where that money's going and make sure that things don't get carried away. If after the course of, pick a number, say 5 years, 3 of them or 4 of them we were spending a whole bunch more money, then there's something amiss here. Then it needs to be tackled again. But judging by these numbers, I think that we can perhaps accomplish both and still have that accountability and that level of comfort for council and know that we're not spending a ridiculous amount of money over and above what's been allocated for that purpose. Perhaps Councillor Gullickson feels differently, but I think there's a way of doing them each without having a dedicated reserve for those funds. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I would love it if we could do that without a dedicated reserve, but I don't know if that's possible with our accounting system. So I'm not sure if we can do it and say that money carries forward and that's where it came from. Because isn't that the whole idea of a reserve? That's all it is the money's always in our general account anyway. It's just numbers on paper. So it doesn't matter. This being that it's an increase the way it is, I feel the same as Councilor Dallas, that it's going to be a cost to our citizens, and I think it should be as clear as possible and out there and show them what we're doing. And by having this reserve build and get spent and maybe more of it spent, and we have to bring money out depending on the weather, which we have no control over. And this is one of the things we have zero control over. I think it's very important that we're out in front of our citizens and showing them where this money is going and how it's going to be spent, and that it doesn't just on a soft year that $100,000 or whatever the number is by the time we're done drops into a fund that we can do with whatever we want. I think it should be dedicated to snow removal because it is an extra cost to our citizens.
Yeah, interesting. I think kind of the same general direction, a little different approach, but I think it was outlined that the majority of these funds are for contracted services, which I think is a very easy thing to track on our current system, but regardless of the way it goes, I'm not interested in additional accounting burden if it's seen that way by administration. But I think we can all agree that we want to see that those funds are put to use and that it doesn't get out of control to find out in 5 years that it's swelled to some ridiculous number of per year for snow removal. C.O. Gowdy?
So one thing I'm hearing is important is that in our annual snow clearing look back of the year's service, we'll make sure to include a really clear accounting of this much was set aside for snow clearing last year. This is how much was spent, and just make sure that that's up front and center, so that that's an annual reminder as well. In addition, possibly to the reserve change, which you can make when we next review reserves as well, or anytime you want to make that motion.
Anyone else? That motion is on your machines before you to bring that forward for budget considerations. So please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimously in favor, brought forward. Thank you. I think that's all the requests for decision that we had. As far as next meetings, we've got a committee of the whole meeting set for 5:30 p.m. on September 18th. And then we have 2 regular council meetings, 5:30 p.m. here. One for September, the following week, September 25th. And then again, October 10th. So anybody watching Council 2 can add those to your calendars. I believe other than the in-camera item that we have for this evening, that concludes our business. Does anyone have anything additional that we've overlooked? Councillor Dallas?
Motion to go in camera.
Thank you very much. It is 7:21 p.m. And we've been at it for 2.5 hours, so why don't we reconvene at 7:30. Be in recess till then. Make it official here and everybody's voting. That's unanimous. We'll reconvene in 6 or 7 minutes, whatever it is at